raced with excitement as she waited to board the plane. This was her first time flying alone, and she couldn't wait to see her grandmother in Los Angeles. The thought of spending 2 whole weeks eating homemade cookies and watching old movies with Grandma filled her with joy. The line moved slowly, and Maya shifted from one foot to the other. She glanced around at the other passengers waiting to board. Some were scrolling through their phones while others chatted quietly or checked their bags one last time. Everything seemed normal, at least for now. When it was finally Maya's turn, she stepped up to the desk where Linda Dawson, the flight attendant, sat. Linda looked tired, her hair pulled back into a tight bun, and her lips pressed together, in a thin line. She didn't smile when Maya approached. Instead, she gave her a quick once-over before focusing on the ticket Maya handed her. Linda took the ticket and held it up to the light, squinting at it like she suspected something was wrong. Maya frowned slightly but stayed quiet. "Is there a problem?" she asked after a moment, trying to sound polite despite feeling confused. Linda didn't answer right away. Instead, she flipped the ticket over, examining every detail. Then she tapped it against the desk, making a sharp noise that made Maya flinch. "This doesn't look quite right," Linda said, her voice cold and clipped. Maya blinked, unsure of what to say. "What do you mean?" "I booked it online, and everything went fine." "Well, maybe everything going fine wasn't enough," Linda replied with a shrug. Her tone was dismissive, almost mocking. "I've seen tickets like this before, ones that look fake or weren't processed properly." Maya felt heat rising in her cheeks. "But it is real. My mom helped me book it. We even got a confirmation email." Linda raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Your mom, huh? Did she double-check everything? Because this," she waved the ticket in the air, "doesn't cut it." Before Maya could respond, Linda did something that shocked everyone nearby. With a flick of her wrist, she tore the ticket straight down the middle. The sound was loud and sharp, cutting through the hum of conversations around them. Maya gasped, staring at the shredded pieces of paper in disbelief. "What are you doing?" Maya demanded, her voice shaking. "You can't just rip my ticket." "Oh, I think I just did," Linda said, smirking. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing. "Listen, kid, if you want to fly today, you're going to have to call your parents and figure out what went wrong. Until then, no boarding pass, no seat, no flight." Maya opened her mouth to argue but stopped herself. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of all these people. She glanced around, hoping someone would step in and tell Linda how unfair this was. But most of the passengers simply looked away, pretending not to notice. A few whispered to each other, shaking their heads, but no one spoke up. Feeling defeated, Maya stepped aside, clutching the torn pieces of her ticket in her hand. She found a corner near the gate and sank onto a nearby bench, her mind racing. How could this happen? She had followed all the instructions, double-checked everything, and still ended up stuck here, unable to board the plane. As she sat there, anger began to replace her sadness. It wasn't fair. None of this was her fault, and yet Linda had treated her like she was lying or trying to cheat the system. Maya knew it wasn't about the ticket. It was about how Linda saw her. A young black girl traveling alone must have seemed suspicious to her, even though Maya had done nothing wrong. After a few minutes of trying to calm herself, Maya pulled out her phone and dialed her mom's number. Victoria Carter picked up on the second ring. "Hey, sweetheart, are you already on the plane?" "No, Mom," Maya said, her voice trembling again. "Something happened." Victoria's tone immediately changed. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" Maya explained everything: the torn ticket, Linda's rude behavior, and how helpless she felt standing there by herself. As she spoke, she heard her mom take a deep breath on the other end of the line. "Okay, Maya," Victoria said after a pause. "Stay calm. I'm going to fix this. Just stay where you are and don't talk to anyone else until I call you back. Can you do that?" Maya nodded, even though her mom couldn't see her. "Yes, Mom." "Good girl. I'll handle it." As soon as they hung up, Maya noticed people glancing at her curiously. Some looked sympathetic, while others seemed uncomfortable. like they didn't know whether to approach her or leave her alone. One older man gave her a small smile and patted her shoulder as he walked past, but that only made her feel worse. She didn't want pity. She wanted justice. While Maya waited anxiously, Linda continued working at the gate, completely unaware of the storm brewing behind the scenes. Passengers filed past her, showing their tickets and receiving their boarding passes without any issues. To them, she was just another flight attendant doing her job. They had no idea that the seemingly ordinary girl sitting off to the side was the daughter of one of the most powerful women in the aviation industry. Back at her office, Victoria Carter listened intently as Maya recounted the story. Her jaw tightened, and her hands clenched into fists. No one treated her daughter like that, not on her watch. But instead of reacting impulsively, Victoria forced herself to stay calm. She knew exactly what needed to be done, and she would make sure Linda regretted ever crossing paths with the Carters. For now, though, Maya remained seated by the gate, holding on to the torn pieces of her ticket like they were lifelines. She watched as the last few passengers boarded the plane, leaving her behind. Despite the anger bubbling inside her, she couldn't help but wonder if things would ever truly change, or if moments like this would always be part of her reality. And somewhere deep down, Maya hoped that whatever came next wouldn't just fix this situation but might also shine a light on the bigger problems hiding beneath the surface. Because if there was one thing she'd learned from her mom, it was that sometimes the hardest battles led to the most important victories. Document. Part 3. By the time Victoria finished comforting Maya, Greg Miller and his team were already preparing for a meeting with Linda Dawson. The atmosphere at the gate had shifted noticeably. Passengers whispered among themselves, pointing discreetly at Victoria as she stood beside her daughter. Some recognized her immediately. Others simply sensed that something big was happening. Whatever the case, everyone could tell this wasn't an ordinary day at the airport. Victoria turned to Maya with a reassuring smile. "Stay here for a moment. Sweetheart, I need to handle a few things, but I'll make sure you're taken care of soon." Maya nodded silently, clutching her mom's hand for just a second longer before letting go. She watched as Victoria walked over to where Greg and the other executives were gathered, her presence commanding attention without any effort. "Greg," Victoria said firmly as she approached. "Let's talk about next steps." Greg cleared, his throat clearly nervous under Victoria's piercing gaze. "We've located Ms. Dawson and we're ready to bring her in for questioning. Depending on what we find, appropriate action will follow." Victoria crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "Good. But let me be clear, this isn't just about disciplining one employee. It's about accountability. We have policies in place to prevent situations like this, yet they failed today. That means there are deeper issues we need to address." Greggy nodded quickly, jotting down notes. "Of course, Ms. Carter, I agree completely. We'll conduct a full review of our training programs and ensure every staff member understands the importance of treating all passengers with respect." "See? That you do," Victoria replied sharply. Then after a pause she added, "And remember, this is personal for me. If anyone thinks this is just another PR issue, they're wrong." With that, Greg signaled for 2 supervisors to escort Linda Dawson to a private conference room near the terminal. As they led her away, Linda glanced around nervously, finally, realizing that something serious was going on. Her earlier confidence seemed to vanish, replaced by confusion and unease. Inside the conference room, Greg wasted no time getting to the point. "Ms. Dawson, we're here to discuss an incident involving a passenger named Maya Carter. Do you recall tearing up her ticket earlier today?" Linda blinked, caught off guard. "The girl at gate 17? Yes, I remember her. I thought her ticket looked suspicious, so I tore it up. I didn't mean any harm, I was just doing my job." Greg frowned deeply. Doing your job doesn't involve destroying a passenger's ticket without proper investigation. "Did you check the system to confirm whether the ticket was valid?" "Well, no," Linda admitted reluctantly. "But it didn't look right to me. Sometimes people try to sneak through with fake tickets, and I wasn't about to let that happen." "And did it occur to you that perhaps your judgment was influenced by bias?" Greg pressed, his tone growing firmer. Linda hesitated, looking uncomfortable. I don't know what you mean by that. Greg sighed heavily. Let's not play games, Ms. Dawson. The passenger in question is a young black girl traveling alone. Witnesses say you treated her unfairly and dismissed her concerns without giving her a chance to explain herself. Does that sound accurate? Linda opened her mouth to argue, but stopped herself. For the first time, she began to realize the gravity of the situation. Look, I may have overreacted, but I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Can't we just move past this? Greg shook his head. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. This incident has drawn significant attention, not only from passengers but also from senior leadership. Your actions violated company policy and damaged our reputation. There will be consequences. As the meeting continued, Greg outlined the disciplinary measures being considered: suspension, termination, and mandatory sensitivity training. He emphasized that such behavior would not be tolerated moving forward. By the end of the conversation, Linda looked pale and shaken, fully aware that her career at the airline was likely over. Meanwhile, back at the gate, Victoria kept a close eye on Maya. Though she tried to stay strong for her daughter, she couldn't help but feel anger simmering beneath the surface. What kind of world allowed someone like Linda to wield power over others based on prejudice? How many other passengers had been mistreated in similar ways, their stories never told? Determined to turn this painful experience into something meaningful, Victoria called another executive meeting. This time she focused on long-term solutions rather than immediate punishment. We can't keep addressing these problems reactively, she said, pacing the room. We need proactive measures to create real change. One of the executives raised a hand hesitantly. What kind of measures are you thinking of, Miss Carter? For starters, Victoria began, we'll launch a new diversity and inclusion initiative across all levels of the company. Every employee, from flight attendants to pilots to managers, will undergo mandatory training to recognize and combat bias. Additionally, we'll establish a hotline where passengers can report incidents of discrimination anonymously. Another executive spoke up. That sounds promising, but how do we ensure accountability? People might attend the training sessions but still act out of bias later. Victoria nodded thoughtfully. Good question. To address that, we'll implement stricter monitoring systems. Managers will be required to document and review any complaints against their staff regularly. Employees found guilty of discriminatory behavior will face severe consequences, including termination. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed Victoria's words. They knew she meant business, and her determination left no room for excuses or delays. While the executives worked on implementing these changes, Greg returned to update Victoria on Linda's status. She's been suspended pending further investigation, he reported. If everything checks out, we'll proceed with termination. Victoria gave a curt nod. Make sure it's done properly, and send her a letter explaining why this decision was made. She needs to understand the impact of her actions. Yes, ma'am, Greg replied, scribbling notes furiously. Finally, it was time to focus on Maya. Victoria walked back to the gate, where her daughter sat patiently waiting. Are you ready to board now, sweetheart? She asked gently. Maya looked up, her eyes lighting up with hope. Does that mean I can still go see Grandma? Victoria smiled warmly. Absolutely. Let's get you on that plane. With Greg's help, they arranged for Maya to receive a new boarding pass and priority. Seating on the flight, as she stepped onto the plane, passengers applauded softly, offering smiles and nods of encouragement. Maya felt a mix of emotions, relief, pride, and gratitude. But most of all, she felt seen. For the first time since the incident, she realized that standing up for herself hadn't been in vain. As the plane taxied down the runway, Maya gazed out the window, watching the city shrink below her. She thought about everything that had happened, the tears, the frustration, the conversations with her mom, and how it all fit into a bigger picture. Maybe this experience would help others avoid the same pain someday. Maybe it would inspire change, even if only in small ways. Back at headquarters, Victoria reflected on the events of the day. While part of her wished she could shield Maya from ever experiencing injustice again, she knew that wasn't possible. Instead, she vowed to use her influence to create a safer, fairer world for her daughter and countless others like her. After all, if anyone understood the power of resilience, it was Victoria Carter. And though the road ahead wouldn't be easy, she felt hopeful. Change rarely came quickly or easily, but with persistence, compassion, and courage, it was always within reach. Document, Part 4. The days following the incident at the airport were filled with reflection for both Maya and her mother, Victoria. Back home in Los Angeles, Maya spent time with her grandmother, enjoying warm hugs, homemade cookies, and stories from the past. But despite the joy of being reunited with Grandma, Maya couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at the gate. It lingered in her mind like a shadow, reminding her that the world wasn't always kind or fair. One evening, as they sat together on the porch sipping lemonade, Maya finally decided to talk about it. "Grandma," she began hesitantly, "do you ever feel like people treat you differently because of how you look?" Her grandmother paused, setting her glass down on the small wooden table between them. She looked at Maya thoughtfully, her eyes soft but serious. "Yes, sweetheart, I do. And I know your mom does too. Sometimes, no matter how hard we try, people see us through their own biases instead of seeing who we really are." Maya frowned, slightly, picking at the label on her cup. "But why does it have to be like that? Why can't everyone just treat each other the same way?" Her grandmother sighed, leaning back in her chair. "That's a good question, Maya. The truth is, some people carry old ideas and fears with them, things they've learned from society or their families. Those ideas make it hard for them to see others clearly. But the good news is, we can help change those views by standing up for ourselves and teaching others to be better." Maya nodded slowly, absorbing her grandmother's words. "Mom says we should use this to help fix bigger problems, not just for me, but for other kids like me." Her grandmother smiled proudly. "That's exactly right. Your mom has always been someone who turns challenges into opportunities. You're lucky to have her as an example." Later that week, when Maya returned home to New York, she found her mom waiting for her at the kitchen table. Papers were spread out everywhere, charts, graphs, and notes scribbled in colorful ink. Victoria looked up as Maya walked in, her face lighting up with a smile. "Hey, sweetheart, how was Grandma's house?" "It was great," Maya said, sliding into the seat across from her. "We baked cookies, watched movies, and talked about stuff." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Stuff, huh? Sounds important." Maya shrugged, smiling sheepishly. "Yeah, I guess it was." Victoria reached over and squeezed her hand. "Well, whenever you're ready to share, I'm here. In the meantime, there's something I want to talk to you about." She gestured toward the papers on the table. "Remember when I told you we'd turn this experience into something positive? Well, I've been working on a plan." Maya leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of plan?" Victoria explained that she wanted to launch a new initiative within the airline called Fly Fair. Its goal would be to promote diversity, inclusion, and respect among employees and passengers alike. "We'll start by improving training programs so staff members understand how bias affects their decisions," Victoria said. "Then we'll create scholarships for young people from underrepresented communities who want to work in aviation, whether as pilots, engineers, or flight attendants." Maya's eyes widened with excitement. "That sounds amazing. Can I help?" "Of course," Victoria replied warmly. "This isn't just my project. It's ours. Together, we can make sure no one else feels the way you did at that gate." Over the next few weeks, mother and daughter worked side by side to bring Fly Fair to life. They met with designers to create posters and videos promoting the campaign, consulted with experts on effective diversity training methods, and even visited schools to encourage students to pursue careers in aviation. Every step of the way, Maya felt empowered knowing she was part of something bigger than herself. Meanwhile, news of the incident continued to spread. Social media buzzed with discussions about racial bias in the airline industry, and many praised Victoria for taking swift action. Some critics argued that firing Linda Dawson wasn't enough, that systemic change required more than punishing one person. Others defended Linda, claiming she'd simply made a mistake. These debates only strengthened Victoria's resolve to push forward with fly fair. Linda, meanwhile, struggled to adjust to her new reality. After losing her job, she moved back in with her sister, feeling embarrassed and unsure of what to do next. At first, she tried convincing herself that the whole thing had been blown out of proportion. It was just one ticket, she muttered to herself late at night. How could it cause so much trouble? But deep down, she knew it wasn't just about the ticket. Her actions had hurt a child whose only crime was looking different from what Linda expected. Slowly, guilt began to creep in, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths about her own beliefs and behaviors. One afternoon, while flipping through channels on TV, Linda stumbled upon an interview featuring Victoria Carter. Dressed in a sleek, navy suit, Victoria spoke passionately about the need for accountability and compassion in the workplace. "We all make mistakes," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But true growth comes from learning and changing, not repeating the same harmful patterns." Linda turned off the TV, her heart heavy with regret. For the first time, she realized that maybe she deserved to lose her job, not because she was a bad person, but because she hadn't done enough to challenge her own biases. Determined to make amends, she picked up a pen and paper and began writing a letter to Victoria. "Dear Ms. Carter, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. What I did to your daughter was wrong, and I take full responsibility for my actions. Losing my job has given me time to reflect, and I now understand how my behavior contributed to a larger problem. If there's anything I can do to support the changes you're making, whether volunteering, speaking to others about my experience, or simply listening, I'd be honored to help. Thank you for holding me accountable and for using this moment to inspire positive change. Sincerely, Linda Dawson." When Victoria received the letter, she read it carefully, her expression thoughtful. While she didn't excuse Linda's actions, she appreciated the sincerity behind the apology. After discussing it with Maya, they decided to respond, not with anger, but with hope. "Dear Linda, thank you for reaching out and acknowledging your role in this situation. Change begins with honesty, and your willingness to reflect is a step in the right direction. As part of our efforts to address systemic issues within the airline industry, we're launching a mentorship program aimed at helping former employees transition into new roles. If you're interested, we'd welcome your participation. Let us know if you'd like to learn more. Sincerely, Victoria Carter," Linda cried when she read the response. For the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe losing her job wasn't the end, but the beginning of a chance to grow. As the months passed, Fly Fair gained momentum. Posters featuring quotes from Victoria and testimonials from employees lined airport terminals nationwide. Passengers shared their own stories of overcoming bias, sparking conversations that rippled far beyond the airline industry. Maya, inspired by the impact of their work, started a blog where she wrote about her experiences and encouraged other young people to speak up against injustice. One evening, as Victoria and Maya sat together reviewing updates on the campaign, Victoria smiled at her daughter. "You know, Maya, I'm proud of you, not just for handling that day with grace, but for turning it into something meaningful. You've shown incredible strength." Maya grinned, hugging her mom tightly. "Thanks, Mom, but I couldn't have done it without you." Together, they looked toward the future, knowing there was still much work to be done. Yet even amid challenges, they remained hopeful, because sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most beautiful victories. Document Part 2. After hanging up with Maya, Victoria Carter sat back in her chair, staring at the phone in her hand. Her mind was racing, but she didn't let her emotions show on her face. Years of running a multi-billion-dollar airline empire had taught her how to stay calm under pressure. Still, this time felt different. This wasn't just about business or numbers. It was personal. Someone had hurt her daughter, and that crossed a line Victoria wasn't willing to forgive easily. She took a deep breath, then opened her laptop and typed an email to Greg Miller, the operations manager for the airline. She kept it short and direct. Greg, I need you to look into an incident involving one of your employees at Gate 17. A passenger named Maya Carter was denied boarding due to what appears to be misconduct by a staff member. Please investigate immediately. As soon as she hit send, Victoria leaned back in her chair again. She knew Greg would recognize the name Carter right away. It wasn't every day someone complained using the same last name as the CEO. But she also knew he wouldn't jump to conclusions until she confirmed it herself. That was fine with Victoria. Let him sweat a little before realizing exactly who he was dealing with. Meanwhile, back at the airport, Maya waited anxiously for her mom's call. She tried not to think too much about what might happen next, but it was hard not to imagine worst-case scenarios. What if Linda refused to admit she was wrong? What if no one believed Maya's side of the story? And what if she never got to see her grandmother after all? Her thoughts were interrupted when a man in a dark suit approached her. He looked like he worked for the airline, judging by his polished shoes and neatly pressed shirt. "Excuse me," he said, kneeling down so he was eye level with Maya. "Are you Maya Carter?" Maya nodded cautiously. "Yes, that's me." The man smiled warmly, though there was a hint of nervousness in his expression. "My name is Mr. Henderson. I'm the supervisor here at the terminal. I understand there was an issue with your ticket earlier." Maya hesitated before answering. "Yeah, the flight attendant tore it up because she thought it was fake." Mr. Henderson frowned deeply, clearly shocked by what he'd heard. "I see. Well, I want to assure you that we're looking into this matter very seriously. In the meantime, can you tell me more about what happened?" Maya explained everything again. How Linda had accused her of having a fake ticket, how she'd torn it up without giving her a chance to prove otherwise, and how humiliating it felt to be treated like she didn't belong. As she spoke, Mr. Henderson listened carefully, occasionally jotting notes on a small pad of paper. When she finished, he sighed heavily. "Thank you for sharing that with me, Maya. I promise we'll get to the bottom of this. For now, please, know that we're doing everything we can to make sure you're able to continue your trip as planned." Maya managed a small smile. It wasn't much, but at least someone seemed to care. "Okay, thanks." Mr. Henderson stood up and gave her a reassuring nod before walking away. Maya watched him disappear into the crowd, wondering if anything he'd said was true. Would they really fix things, or was this just another empty promise? Back at headquarters, Greg Miller was already scrambling to figure out what had happened. When he saw Victoria's email, his stomach dropped. He recognized the name instantly, not only because of its connection to the CEO, but also because it triggered memories of similar incidents in the past. Passengers mistreated because of their race, employees making assumptions based on stereotypes. These were problems Greg had been trying to address for years, but progress always felt painfully slow. He picked up the phone and dialed the number for the airport's main office. After a brief conversation with Mr. Henderson, Greg learned enough to confirm his fears. A flight attendant named Linda Dawson had indeed torn up a young girl's ticket, and not just any girl, but the daughter of Victoria Carter. "Oh no," Greg muttered under his breath as he hung up. This was bad, really bad. Not only had Linda violated company policy, but she'd done so in front of dozens of witnesses. Worse still, word was spreading fast among passengers and staff alike. Social media posts were already popping up online, criticizing the airline for allowing such behavior to occur. Knowing he couldn't delay any longer, Greg called Victoria directly. His hands trembled slightly as he dialed, and when she answered, his voice came out higher than usual. "Ms. Carter, thank you for reaching out. I've reviewed the situation, and I assure you we're taking this extremely seriously." Victoria's tone was icy but controlled. "Good, because I expect nothing less. Now tell me exactly what happened." Greg launched into an explanation, summarizing everything he'd learned from Mr. Henderson and other sources. As he spoke, Victoria listened silently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she asked pointedly, "And what are you planning to do about it?" Greg swallowed hard. "We're preparing to meet with Ms. Dawson immediately. Depending on the outcome of our investigation, disciplinary action will follow. Rest assured, we won't tolerate behavior like this within our organization." Victoria nodded, though Greg couldn't see her. "See that you don't. And remember, Greg, this isn't just about punishing one person. It's about addressing the larger issues that allowed something like this to happen in the first place." "Yes, ma'am," Greg replied quickly. "Absolutely." After ending the call, Victoria felt a mix of satisfaction and frustration. Satisfaction because she knew Greg would move swiftly to resolve the issue, and frustration because situations like this shouldn't exist in the first place. No child should ever have to endure what Maya had gone through today. Determined to keep her promise to her daughter, Victoria grabbed her coat and headed out of her office. She needed to visit the airport herself, not just to ensure Maya boarded her flight safely, but also to send a clear message to everyone involved. If anyone doubted the seriousness of the situation, seeing the CEO arrive in person would leave no room for misunderstanding. At the gate, Maya spotted her mom long before Victoria reached her. Despite everything that had happened, a wave of relief washed over her when she saw her mother striding purposefully toward her. Victoria looked every bit the powerful executive she was, dressed in a sharp blazer and heels, her posture confident and commanding. Yet when she reached Maya, her expression softened instantly. "Hey, baby," Victoria said, pulling Maya into a tight hug. "Are you okay?" Maya nodded against her mom's shoulder. "Yeah, I'm better now that you're here." Victoria pulled back slightly, cupping Maya's face in her hands. "I'm so sorry this happened to you. But I promise you, it won't go unpunished. We're going to fix this. Together." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. For the first time since the incident, she felt truly supported. Whatever came next, she knew she wouldn't have to face it alone. While Victoria consoled Maya, Greg Miller arrived at the scene, accompanied by several other senior executives. They huddled together near the gate, whispering urgently as they discussed the next steps. Word had spread quickly throughout the terminal, and curious onlookers gathered nearby, eager to catch a glimpse of the unfolding drama. Linda Dawson, meanwhile, remained oblivious to the chaos brewing around her. She continued assisting passengers with routine tasks, unaware that her actions earlier that day had set off a chain reaction, reaching all the way to the top levels of the company. But it wouldn't be long before reality caught up with her. And when it did, nothing would ever be the same again, for Linda, for Maya, or for the airline itself. Document Part 5. Months had passed since the incident at the airport, and life for Maya Carter had changed in ways she never expected. She was no longer just a young girl who loved cookies and movies with her grandmother. She was now someone who understood the power of standing up for herself and others. Her blog, titled Wings of Change, had gained thousands of followers, many of whom were inspired by her courage to speak out against injustice. Each post shared stories of resilience, hope, and progress, encouraging readers to believe they could make a difference too. Back at the airline headquarters, Victoria Carter's efforts with Fly Fair continued to grow. The initiative had become more than just a campaign. It was a movement. Employees across the country participated in workshops designed to challenge biases and foster understanding. Passengers noticed the difference, praising the airline for its commitment to inclusivity. Posters featuring Maya's smiling face alongside quotes from Victoria hung proudly in terminals, reminding everyone that change started with small, meaningful actions. One sunny afternoon, Maya stood near Gate 17, the very same gate where everything had begun. This time, however, she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was Chloe Bennett, her best friend, who had come along for the ride as they boarded a flight to Los Angeles. Maya glanced around, taking in the bustling scene before them. People moved quickly, chatting animatedly or scrolling through their phones. It all seemed so normal, yet Maya knew how much work had gone into making it feel that way. As they approached the desk, a friendly flight attendant greeted them warmly. "Good afternoon, ladies. Welcome aboard Flight 427 to Los Angeles." Maya smiled politely, handing over her ticket. For a moment, she wondered if anyone recognized her, or if the posters nearby sparked any memories. But the attendant simply scanned the ticket and handed it back with a nod. "Enjoy your flight." Chloe nudged Maya playfully as they walked toward the plane. "See? No drama this time. Just smooth sailing." Maya laughed softly. "Yeah, guess you're right. But I'll admit, part of me kind of misses the excitement." "Excitement?" Chloe teased, raising an eyebrow. "You mean getting yelled at by some random lady and having your mom swoop in like a superhero?" "Well, yeah," Maya admitted with a grin. "It was kinda cool seeing Mom take charge like that. Plus, look at everything that came out of it. Without that day, we wouldn't have fly fair." Chloe nodded thoughtfully. "True. Still, I'm glad things worked out okay. You deserve to travel without worrying about stuff like that." They found their seats near the window and settled in, chatting excitedly about their upcoming visit with Maya's grandmother. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Maya gazed out at the runway, her mind drifting back to the past few months. So much had changed, not just for her family, but for countless others whose lives had been touched by the ripple effects of one torn ticket. Meanwhile, Linda Dawson sat in a quiet corner of a community center, flipping through a stack of papers. After losing her job, she'd joined the mentorship program offered by Fly Fair. At first, she'd been hesitant, unsure if she belonged in a place dedicated to undoing the harm caused by people like her. But over time, she discovered a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. Today, she was helping organize a career fair aimed at introducing underrepresented youth to opportunities in aviation. Tables lined the room, each staffed by professionals, eager to share their experiences. Pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers, and flight attendants spoke passionately about their journeys, inspiring young attendees to dream big. As Linda walked among the crowd, she spotted Maya's picture on one of the posters promoting the event. The caption read, "Change starts with us. Together, we can build a brighter future." Linda paused, staring at the image for a long moment. She didn't know Maya personally, but seeing her face reminded her of why she was here, to do better, to be better. Later that evening, after the fair ended, Linda returned home feeling hopeful for the first time in months. She picked up her phone and opened the news app, scrolling until she found an article about Fly Fair. The piece highlighted the success of the campaign, quoting employees and passengers alike who praised the airline's transformation. One quote stood out to Linda. "We're not perfect, but we're learning, and that makes all the difference." Tears welled up in her eyes as she read those words. They weren't just talking about the airline, they were talking about her. Losing her job had been painful, but it had also given her a chance to grow. Now, as she looked ahead, she saw possibilities instead of regrets. Back on the plane, Maya watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beside her, Chloe dozed off, her head resting against the window. Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a notebook, jotting down thoughts for her next blog post. She wanted to write about gratitude, not just for the good things, but for the hard moments that taught her strength. When the plane landed in Los Angeles, Maya and Chloe stepped off together, greeted by the warm California air. Waiting for them at baggage claim was Maya's grandmother, who wrapped her in a tight hug. "Welcome back, sweetheart. How was the flight?" "It was great," Maya replied, smiling brightly. No tears this time, just happy memories. Her grandmother chuckled. "That's my girl, always finding the silver linings." Over the next few days, Maya spent time catching up with her grandmother and exploring the city with Chloe. Yet even amidst the fun, she couldn't shake the sense that something bigger was happening, a shift in the world around her. Everywhere she went, she saw signs of progress, posters celebrating diversity, conversations about equality, and reminders that change was possible when people worked together. On their final night in Los Angeles, Maya sat on the porch with her grandmother, staring up at the stars. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think that bad things happened because the world was unfair. But now I realize it's not always about fairness. It's about what we do afterward." Her grandmother smiled, patting her hand gently. "That's a wise perspective, Maya. And remember, every action you take matters, even the little ones." Maya nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. She thought about her mom, working tirelessly to create a better future. She thought about Linda, trying to rebuild her life with honesty and humility. And she thought about herself, growing stronger with each new challenge. The next morning, as Maya and Chloe boarded their return flight to New York, Maya paused briefly at gate 17. She glanced at the spot where she'd once stood, clutching a torn ticket and fighting back tears. Today, though, she felt nothing but pride. That moment had been painful, yes, but it had also been the start of something beautiful. As the plane soared into the sky, Maya leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes. She imagined all the lives being touched by Fly Fair, employees learning to see beyond stereotypes, passengers traveling without fear of judgment, and young dreamers daring to pursue careers in aviation. Somewhere below, Linda was doing her part too, proving that second chances could lead to meaningful change. And high above the clouds, Maya knew one thing for certain: the journey wasn't over. There would still be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and frustration. But as long as people kept striving for kindness, accountability, and understanding, the world would keep moving forward, one step at a time.